Libra, this is Fox Astrology here with your astrology and tarot report for September 2019. This one is a general one. Be sure to check out the one for love or relationships if you're interested in that. I have links below as well as links to a playlist that will have all the different signs. So if you're interested in seeing your sun or moon sign, if you're watching this because you have a Libra ascendant, be sure to find the sun or moon sign and vice versa. My ascendant sign info will be in each of the videos. There's not as much info on sun or moon signs because I don't have as accurate a picture of your natal chart without your ascendant sign. So be sure to check out your ascendant sign if you haven't already. And there's a playlist below where you can see all the different zodiac signs for both the general readings and the love and relationship readings. So to get started, on the 2nd of September, we have Venus squaring Jupiter. We also have two other transits on the same day. We have the Sun in conjunction with Mars, and we have a T-square, which is basically one planet opposite another planet, and that planet square a third planet. So it creates this little sort of triangle or T-square. Now in this case, the T-square is a little loose. The angle that it makes with Neptune in the T-square is not perfect. It's not a 0 degrees, but between Neptune, Venus, and Jupiter, this is the T-square. So overall, it's in angular houses and it's in fixed signs. So it's pretty strong. It's a lot about developing or increasing structure in your life, increasing stability. So here all together on the second, I've got the Ascension card. The key thing to take away from this transit is balance between maybe your life purpose or your passion or sort of your higher calling and the moment-to-moment physical experience, the emotions, the feelings, like physical sensations, and maybe even thoughts that are distracting, that sort of thing. So here we're seeing with the Sun and Mars conjunction, big infusion of energy, lots of impulse, lots of willpower, making it a really important time in this transit, in this month, to be active, to also be mindful of being overactive or overextending yourself physically. So it's a little bit of both, but ultimately you're going to have a lot of energy to do stuff. So you may feel extra motivated, extra willful, maybe even a little bit more aggressive in your kind of attitude or your approach to things. And with Venus in square with Jupiter, what you're going to have is maybe sort of a lack of a center, or maybe having difficulty really centering and staying focused. So as a result, it's kind of scattered. Now with the T-square, your experience may be really feeling like a pull between two polarities, I guess you could say. One, like I mentioned, on one hand, the higher calling, and on the other hand, the physical experience. Feeling pulled between things. Recommendation here is to look at social or business activities. This would be great for you as a Libra to really consider ways in which you can bring people together, see life from other perspectives, consider other points of view, that sort of thing. So, seeing as for you, Libra, the Sun sits in Leo, Venus sits in Leo, Jupiter sits in Scorpio, Mars sits in Leo, and we also have finally Neptune sitting in Aquarius. Now, the position of all of these planets in your natal chart, or according or in relation to your natal chart, we have the 11th house, we have the 2nd house, we have the 5th house. Nothing too strong, nothing too cardinal, nothing too angular, nothing like that. So it's not going to have a huge impact compared to the other signs that have these on really strong angles, but ultimately it's still going to have a pretty strong effect in terms of your reputation, in terms of your communication, in terms of your creativity. That's all going to have an effect in those areas of your life. So next, on the 10th, we have the 7 of love I've brought up because we have the Sun in opposition to Neptune. Now, Neptune, I mentioned before, is in Aquarius, sitting in your 5th house. The Sun is in Leo, sitting in your 11th house. So it's this opposition between creativity and risk-taking, sort of ego-based adventure or risk-taking, that sort of thing, in ways of establishing identity, versus the 11th house, which is all about sort of, what's the word, equality, social equality especially. So I think in general the balance here to reach for is looking at ways of avoiding maybe committing to serious engagements, relationships. What Neptune does in this transit is it's going to kind of bring in this fog where all of a sudden seeing clearly is not as easy. You can't see as further into the future as before. So you're going to feel like when you're making decisions, you're maybe feeling like there's a pressure to make a decision, just because you're used to being able to make decisions really easily. But in this case, it's going to be unclear. So the recommendation practically is to, first of all with Neptune, try to watch your heavy chemicals or drugs or anything like that. So alcohol, coffee, that sort of thing, stimulants. Those things will have a much stronger effect on you during this transit, as well as looking at the ability to get clear answers and to provide clear answers for others. You want to make sure that you're looking at yes or no questions, usually asking yes or no questions, so you can get really clear, concise answers, as well as not providing unclear answers to others, because that's where you can possibly end up overcommitting or committing to something you didn't really understand completely. So that's the real key thing here. The Seven of Love represents this idea of castles in the clouds, sort of building up these ideas and concepts and theories that don't really have a grounded sense in reality, and so you can end up making some overcommitted situations. So later on the 13th, we have the Sun trining Pluto. Now, Pluto sits in Sagittarius also, and Sagittarius in your natal chart is sort of in your third house of communication. So here the situation is maybe learning and making changes in which you, how would you say, in which you're able to communicate and express yourself are going to be really important. The Sun sitting in Leo, which is in your 11th house, again, we have a situation of, your role in society, your ability to make changes and transform and reform the environment, the social environment around you. So here we have signs of leadership, of power, of transformation. And when Pluto's involved, there's even this sort of investigation sort of energy. But the key point here is making big changes has to do with taking action. It's not just learning about changes to make. It's not just picking up information that changes your perspective. But in this case, it's applying that information, applying that knowledge and experience. And that's what the Lady of Love is about. It's sort of very present, very confident, very centered in herself, self-knowledge. And that self-knowledge gives you the ability to act with conviction. Knowing who you are, knowing your strengths and weaknesses allows you to make decisions quicker, allows you to make decisions that are going to have your advantage because you're understanding where your strengths are. You're going to make better decisions for that. So keep in mind, during this time it's a trine, and when trines are involved, they're really easy, they're really effortless, it's kind of an easy flow of energy between the Sun and Pluto here. So you may not even notice it, but you might feel this ease of picking or beginning big change in your life. So sort of ride that wave and allow that to move you forward through areas that maybe before you had a harder time making changes in. On the 21st, we have Jupiter squaring Neptune. Now, in squares, this means there is a tendency to have to work harder or to move through or past or over around obstacles in order to accomplish what normally would be a simple task. This time it's going to be difficult. Now here, the square between Jupiter and Neptune may have you feeling, on one hand, really, really optimistic, really feeling confident, really feeling adventurous, and on the other hand, Neptune making things confusing, making this haze, having difficulty picking out details, having a difficulty being realistic and grounded in things. And so together, since it's a square, you may feel like you're both, basically you may feel a tendency to have this internal battle over, again, this theme of work versus play, the calling versus the physical experience, the emotional experience. And so recommendation here is to try to keep an eye out for shortcuts, and you want to avoid those shortcuts whenever possible, because somehow you may end up feeling super confident, super able to do something, feeling like the shortcut is really going to skip some unnecessary part of the process, but in this case it is going to be necessary. The Squire of Swords is sort of this youthful energy, this I want to say almost immature energy, but not necessarily. I think what it is this youthful, sort of unjaded, positive, optimistic sort of attitude that sometimes, if you remember when you were young, like much, much younger, may have gotten you into trouble, feeling super confident about something. And so that's the balance here, is balancing this youthful energy, this optimism, with the grounded and possibly looking at ways of doing this step by step. Try and have this perspective of the long term during this transit, and that will really help, because I think this transit is really trying to bring out your sense of balance between work and play. I feel like that's a big theme this month for you. Next, actually I wanted to mention too, Jupiter sitting in Scorpio, that's in your second house. So this does have something to do with material possessions, or basically material belongings. It could be financial stability, it could be work related if you have a job that's really just for the money. It could have to do with home, or basically anything that belongs to you and has to do with your financial possessions, material possessions, that sort of thing. So keep that in mind through this transit. Try to maintain this sort of sense of long-term perspective. On the 25th, we have Venus squaring Saturn. Now, Saturn also sits in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius in your natal chart is the third house, the house of communications, house of siblings, a house of local things, a house of closeness and short distance. Now here, I feel like the stresses of responsibility seem to get to you at this point in the month. Recommendation here is for rest, is for recuperation, it's for pacing yourself. There's going to be these feelings of weariness, possibly even feeling lonely or just kind of separated from other people, feeling just different and feeling like people don't get you or understand you or sympathize. And so there's going to be this withdrawal tendency to feel kind of depressed. And so the best thing to do for that is self-care. The best thing to do is to really take care of how you're feeling, take care of your situation emotionally, physically, mentally, and to pace yourself and to allow yourself some time to feel better about that. These things tend to pass once you're able to really just get a breath of fresh air, so to speak. It's not necessarily about getting out and having fun. I mean, unless that's really what it takes for you to de-stress and to recharge. It depends on your sort of energy, but ultimately finding a way to slow down and take a rest. You may actually find yourself sort of bitter or maybe kind of edgy with people, and so it's best to really spend that time alone so that you can really help yourself feel better. On the 30th, we have Venus squaring Pluto. Now, Pluto again is in Sagittarius. Venus has moved by this time to Virgo. So Virgo sits in, let's see, Virgo. In your natal chart, I think that would be, yeah, your 12th house. So sort of an unconscious area, but here the struggle is balancing between this Venus energy and Pluto. On one hand, Venus is the aesthetic, beauty, pleasure, fun, physical enjoyment of this experience, versus Pluto, this reformation, transformation, power, rebirth. And so here the struggle is between these two energies. As a square, you're going to feel like a struggle to accomplish something. You're going to feel like you're unable to enjoy yourself, unable to really enjoy beauty or pleasure or fun in general until you feel like you've accomplished something, or until you feel like you've won. And so between you and yourself, there may be some commitments you've made that you're going to feel under pressure to get done. There's also going to be commitments or arrangements between you and other people that you may feel you need to create some pressure on in order to get movement. And that may have you at odds or sort of edgy with other people, feeling paranoid, maybe feeling like you have to really pull some strings or get manipulative, or just kind of, like I said, create some pressure on other people in order to win, in order to get that accomplishment, that sort of feeling of finally getting some headway on something. And so the struggle here is this balance is trying to recognize the accomplishments you already have, trying to recognize what you've already won, what you've already gained, what you already have that you can be grateful for in your life. And that's on the 30th. So I would recommend, if you don't already, looking at some kind of list that you can put together on that day, and just think to yourself, you know what can I really be grateful for? Help remind myself of what I've already done, so that I can, once I've gotten some leeway with something, I can relax, I can enjoy myself. Because sometimes if you can't get out of your head about that, you'll end up, it could be you end up self-sabotaging, you end up burning out, you end up giving up, or you end up hurting somebody else or hurting yourself because of this difficulty really learning to sort of take for granted, I guess you could say, So that wraps it up for the month. I'm going to pull a couple of cards for you and just see if there's anything coming through, messages for you for the month of September, and then we'll be wrapped up. Alright, so here we have the raven and the butterfly. First things first, the butterfly, I feel like maybe it's a message for you, Libra, to consider really the stages that you're at in this process. I don't know if this is related necessarily to this Pluto transit, maybe looking at accomplishments or goals that you have right now, but the butterfly really wants you to take a look at where you're at in the process, because there's different stages of development, just like there is for a butterfly or a caterpillar. There's stages of development, and so it's important to remember where you're at in the stage of like a project or a plan. Sometimes you're just researching or getting interested in a topic or in a plan that you have, and considering what your options are and weighing things and talking to people and getting advice if you have to. And then after that, there's planning and implementing and resources you're trying to put together. And then after that, there's the beginning signs of motion and momentum, and all of that takes a certain time to develop and a time to finish. And so from one point to the next, knowing where you're at really allows you to be focused, really allows you to not get distracted with other stages of the process when you can't really help, where you're at by doing something that belongs in a different stage. Like, I'll give an example if that sounds confusing. If you're really in the stage of researching and you haven't quite made a decision yet, you wouldn't want to start making moves. It's sort of like, what's the word? I think the expression is counting chickens before your eggs hatch or something. The idea is basically recognizing the stage that you're at will allow you to focus purely on what's right in front of you and to not get distracted with what comes later, whether that's the pressure of time, the fulfilling feelings of, being finished quickly, all of that stuff. Don't let that get in the way, so to speak. Next, we have the Raven. I feel like what's here is this discussion about the idea of magic. The Raven represents this deep sense of magic, universal law. I want to say the message here for you is to open your eyes, open your mind to the possibility that magic in the realest, most universal sense exists. Sometimes we can get caught up in explaining things away, not allowing this idea of magic to just be, but for us to find an explanation for why it is, what it is, how it happened, all of that stuff. And so the message here for this week is to allow yourself to, get swept away. Allow yourself to just not try to explain it when something magical happens in your life. To just allow it to be different, allow it to be unique, allow it to be inexplicable, and to allow it to enter your life in a very magical way. And that can really change your perspective. It can really change your life, honestly, when you let something just be and not try to explain it away. It can really have a bigger impact, because sometimes when you explain things away, all of a sudden it doesn't really seem that important. It doesn't really seem like it was that impressive or that helpful or that meaningful to you, because all of a sudden you've rationalized its existence. So the messages here really hopeful for you during this month of having transformation, of sort of clearing the cobwebs, of seeing new perspectives, having some big changes in your life. I'm really excited for you, Libra. I look forward to your feedback. Please comment below if you can. Let me know how this month goes for you. Hit the like button if you want to encourage me to keep going. That's great feedback for me to let me know how I'm doing. And as always, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to catch the report for October, as well as my weekly readings. Sometimes I even do some deeper looks at the transits to give you a better idea of how to use the bigger transits to your advantage. So I look forward to hearing from you. Have a good month.